All right, quick pause before today's episode. Let's talk about data accuracy because I watch too many brands make huge mistakes based on broken attribution. If your Google Analytics revenue doesn't match your Shopify dashboard, which I know happens for most, or Meta claims credit for sales that actually came from email, you're making very expensive guesses about what's actually working. And from my years at Shopify working with many brands, I can tell you this, the problem is costing you real money every single day. Now, Littledata fixes this, and they're trusted by over 2,000 Shopify brands for conversion tracking that actually works. They create one reliable foundation across everything that you're already using. Think about Google Analytics for, revenue tracking, Meta, Google, TikTok, for better ad attribution. Think about Klaviyo, Attentive, like for your flows, and even Recharge, for example, if you're running a subscription business. And so the best part is that you set it up once and it just works. Like there's no maintenance, there's no technical headaches. It just scales as you grow your business. So if you're kind of tired of making decisions based on data that you don't completely trust, totally head over to littledata.io. They and their solution will help you fix your attribution foundation so that you have accurate data. So littledata.io. All right, let's go jump into today's episode.
You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
All right, welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. Today, I'm talking with Ed Upton, who's the CEO and founder of a company called Littledata, and they're at littledata.io. Now, Ed's been kind of on the show quite a few times. I don't know how many, but at least 3 or 4 times. And what's very interesting is that every conversation that I have with him, I actually learn something new about what's actually, unfortunately, breaking under the hood with Shopify's tracking. This whole data layer kind of situation is really on a lot of people's minds. And that's kind of the challenge that Ed and his team have been working on. And, if you've ever kind of looked at maybe the Facebook Ads Manager or Google Analytics and Shopify, and then, you see like 3 completely different conversion numbers or have no idea which one to trust. I think that's kind of what I want to unpack today. Ed's company has kind of been, rebuilt tracking literally from the ground up. And once again, Shopify does it interesting, but what Ed has created now, we're going to talk a little bit about, number one, why it matters to you as a founder and this whole new data layer, and what changes when you finally get your numbers all aligned. So, hi Ed, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Yes, it does feel like I'm a regular guest, so thanks for having me back one more time.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's start simple first. I'd like you to walk me through a little bit about like what's happening when a Shopify brand looks at their dashboard, and like I said at the top of the show here, Facebook says one number, GA says another number. I mean, there seems to be a lot of disparity, and even in the even my Shopify days, I always say, hey, you know what? You have to be okay with that 20% or more kind of differential between these different tools and things. And so talk a little about like the original core of Littledata, and then we'll kind of move on to the data layer.
Yeah, sure. So, I think for most of the brands listening to this show and using Shopify, that is the source of truth, right? We'll know that, that order number we get and finally on cancel refunded, that's the revenue that we're going to get hitting our bank account after a few days of payout. So the problem really is, why can't we get that revenue that we know is true in Shopify into the marketing channels or into the reporting tools that we're using to measure that marketing? And it turns out that we sort of drill down into what's actually happening there. It's all reliant on what's called sort of client-side tracking. So, Google Analytics only knows that someone's purchased on your site because it's getting a little ping from the thank you page to say, hey, this person just bought for $100. If that ping never happens, if it never gets to Google Analytics or it's somehow corrupted, then revenues never tracked. And that, as you say, leads to this basic problem most stores have probably observed, where 20% or even 30% of your revenue is just not visible. It's happening on Shopify. You're getting paid out for it. That's cool. It is real money. It's just not visible in these platforms. And it's not just Google Analytics. All of the other marketing tools you're using, and you mentioned Facebook ads, happens, true for TikTok, true for Instagram, true for these email and SMS platforms, that then they're tracking these metrics based on a ping from the user server to say that they got that. Now, if you want to track a page view, that's probably the right thing to do. But, an order is something a bit more formal than just viewing a page on a website. So it's a real thing. It's a transaction that happens. And so in Littledata's world, we think of that not as something that can be tracked via a ping from a thank you page, which frankly, in modern e-commerce often doesn't get seen anyway. But increasingly just actually as a direct server-side integration or server-to-server integration from Shopify to the marketing channel. And that means we can 100% relay all of the orders, all of the revenue, uninterrupted, not affected by Apple's intelligent tracking perfection, not affected by ad blockers, not affected by whether customers consent to be tracked or not. Just direct integration, one-to-one, every order into the marketing channels you care about.
I see. That makes a lot of sense, though. And I know, like I said, in the early days, that's kind of one of the core reasons why I was recommending Littledata, because of that. But then now knowing that Littledata has kind of expanded out further in this thing that I think that you kind of coined now your data layer, is quite interesting, because it seems to me that based on my research, you're kind of capturing kind of everything now that's actually happening on a Shopify store, not just kind of syncing data points. We're talking about like product views and add to cart and checkouts and purchases, almost like customer identity things. I think there's even a connection a little bit over to Klaviyo and others. Can you talk a little about this data layer and like why it's important, number one, and then talk about some of the specifics about it? Because I just want to make sure that I'm clear too, because I know it's fairly new but really exciting upgrade.
Yeah, so I think what we recognize is that most D2C brands are using the same channels. There isn't it's not innovating as a brand to try and find some new out there channel. I mean, sure, you can go and try Reddit ads or LinkedIn or whatever, but there's really a tiny audience there in terms of consumers, and so it really comes down to can you squeeze the best out of Google Ads, Meta, Klaviyo, and what brands need to be able to do to maximize those channels is a few things. First of all, they need consistent data between them all. And so that's the fundamental point of the data layer, is that exactly the same events, exactly the same customer and product properties are going to be synced across all those channels. But you also need to be able to enrich that customer and product data. So both in terms of creating more smarter segmentation, more granular audiences, maybe people who purchased a particular product and with a particular category, or people who've purchased a subscription product versus a one-time product. These are all things that you need to be able to sync with your marketing channels easily, without any code, without any custom Google Tag Manager setup. That is what Littledata allows. The data layer that syncs all of the stuff you have in Shopify, not just the stuff that would be kind of visible on the page, but all that kind of behind the scenes data, product metafields, customer loyalty tiers, all this stuff syncing into your marketing channels. So you can either build the right audience, retarget the right people, or just trigger the right campaign at the right time to the right people.
I see. So it almost sounds like it's the plumbing a little bit for all of the other tools, so they all kind of work together.
Yeah, we choose the term data layer, but I think we also think about data pipeline or data infrastructure. I mean, I know some of our competitors talk more about infrastructure. I personally think that sounds a little a little too heavy. It's not that what we do behind the scenes is heavy, but I think data layer, when we thought about positioning the brand last year, felt like a more accessible thing, that everyone understands that they need that layer between their commerce platform, their Shopify platform, and their marketing channels.
I see. Maybe let's talk a little about some of these ad platforms. I want to get like a little bit tactical, maybe, if I can, but let's say a brand kind of installs Littledata, like what actually changes as soon as it's installed? Like, if you can kind of walk me through, so I'm curious about like the impact that it can now have on Meta or Google enhanced conversions or Klaviyo. I'm just curious kind of what happens with that new data layer.
Well, let's take it channel by channel. Maybe let's start with Meta, since it's generally the most important acquisition channel. So, look, you probably currently have the Facebook and Instagram app that Shopify, built with Meta and is free to install. Fine, it does use the Conversions API, the server-side connection into Meta. But what we find is it's just lacking a lot of detail. So not only are you missing some of the key funnel events that will allow you to retarget people who had abandoned cart or abandoned checkout, but even the purchase itself, the ability for Meta to match that event back to a user in their ad network is dependent on them having not just one identifier, but a whole heap of identifiers. And Meta calls it event match quality score. So the extent to which you're events have a good match quality score means the extent to which they can be attributed back to an ad. And so, a very simple level of it, if the algorithm can't understand that a particular creative or particular placement is driving sales, then it can't automatically allocate more budget and choose that right creative. So the example I always use is, let's say you have two ad creatives, version A, version B, and one gets 4 orders attributed, version A gets 4 orders attributed, version B gets 2 orders attributed. Facebook won't just slightly favor version A, it will massively favor version A. It will probably allocate 90% of the budget to that one because it thinks it's doubly as good at converting, right? The problem is, what if version B was actually missing? Or what if one of those conversions was duplicated on version A, so it was actually 3, not 4 orders, and perhaps version B missed one? Actually, it was 3 versus 3. So targeting is very sensitive to the signal being sent into the Meta platform. And if we can send a slightly better targeting, both in terms of accuracy of the events, the actual orders or the actual checkouts or adds to cart as they happen in real time, but also the better attribution of those events back to an ad, then Meta's algorithm, obviously the thing that they invest hugely in, or the clever smart learning to optimize your budget can go to work.
I have one question about Meta kind of conversion API, because what I find interesting though, and I don't know, I'm kind of hoping you do it, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but I find it interesting that there's lots of conversion data that's out there, but imagine, and I'm hoping you do this, but imagine if you're able to send the conversion events back to Meta, and then can that then be used for campaigns for like net new customer acquisition? Like, because versus like repeat purchases, that's maybe a little bit easier to do on your own. But people, I don't know. I'm just curious on your feedback on that, because I think there's some opportunity there.
Absolutely. So one of the things you absolutely is sending kind of basically offline or non-web orders back to Meta. So in a normal world, those orders would be unattributable. There was no click journey, let's say, from the ad through the purchase. But I think we all know that if we're doing lots of display or, creative on, let's say, Instagram, that will drive sales across all channels. It's not just that people click through on the ad. Quite a lot of people will see the ad and then go and purchase in store, or go and purchase on Amazon, or go and purchase on TikTok Shop. And so the brilliant thing here is that we can bring all of the purchases across all the channels, not just the online store. We can feed those back into Meta with the customer's email, with their phone number, perhaps even some other identifiers like their IP address. And then Meta can figure out that some of those non-web orders were driven by Meta ads. And that is critical in terms of understanding your true return on ad spend, because often brands, don't get me wrong, that there are times when Meta is hugely expensive, but often ads are underappreciating the value driven by ads because they're not really attributing all of the orders across all the channels.
Right. So then what about Google then? Does it fit into the same bucket?
Yep. So Google launched a similar product to Meta Conversions API, as you say, they call enhanced conversions for leads. And what it does is enable us, again, to send server-side, not just the order, but like all of the customer details about the word enhanced, basically in their case means like, who was this person, what's their email, what's their physical address, and then can we match them back to an ad across the Google device graph? Obviously, Google and Meta have huge device graphs. They know, who it is that's using different websites across vast numbers of devices. And so what Google and Meta are in a brilliant position to do is to use the data first-party data we're sharing from your own Shopify store to then match that back. And again, what we find is that greater accuracy leads to greater efficiency of ad spend. In a similar way to I described to Meta, Google can then auto-optimize PMax campaigns to say, right, now I really know that this actually drove 20-30% more ads than previously. We can be much sure about budget allocation and auto scaling. And we find the effect that, you obviously can import conversions from Google Analytics into Google Ads, and we recommend doing both. But what you can only ever use these enhanced conversions directly into Google Ads. Can you do this matching based off the actual customer data like email and phone?
I see. So then I guess I'm hypothesizing here, but I assume that then the Klaviyo integration, they're kind of the elephant in the room as far as like email and SMS is concerned. But it's interesting because we know, like, imagine being able to have like product views or cart activities and purchase, information and a proper customer identity, I guess, and then sent over to Klaviyo flows.
Yep. So Klaviyo does a much better job because, they've obviously specialized in Shopify, and Shopify is their main customer base. They do a much better job of tracking more of the customer events. So they do track adds to cart and in fact, they track purchases server side. It's just that we can improve it in two main ways. First of all, as you say, we can better identify that people who are on your email list are active on your storefront right now, and you can trigger like an abandoned cart or abandoned browse flow. And those flows tend to be very highly converting because these are people who are, really active right now. Obviously, I think we've all had dumb add to cart flows where people, it's triggered kind of after you already purchased and stuff. Again, that's bad data driving it. But typically, if we can get more people into that audience and identify these people who are active right now and looking to purchase, then we can win back those people. So they're already highly converting. The limitation with most brands is that they simply don't trigger enough of those emails, and we can trigger like 50 to 100% more. And we do that because it's really, I describe it as joining the dots. We're not using any third-party data sources. There's nothing shady. We're not using some big sort of, gathered from lots of different brands. And I say that because there definitely are players out there in the market who are using shady data sources. And I always think I tend to not like the word identity resolution because it associates with tools that are very much not spam compliant. But I think, where the way we're doing it is just simply like people have been on your list anyway. They're definitely active in your storefront. We're simply just joining the dots between the two. And you can take the exact same abandonment flows you have set up in Klaviyo. You can clone them, use your latest trigger, and you just immediately see an uplift. It's literally a 10-minute fix to improve the data quality flowing into Klaviyo. And now there's two other cool things there. One is that adding the Klaviyo integration has a nice boost on the ad channels because we can use the Klaviyo identity to tell Meta that this is Edward who is purchasing or about to purchase and retarget them by ads as well. So if we know who they are in Klaviyo, we know their email, then we can generally better match them back to the ad and allow them to be targeted that way as well. So it's a general workaround I think everyone's aware that, the kind of cookies are increasingly unreliable as a form of tracking customers. Using their actual email and phone number is a better form of identifier.
I see. So then let's talk about maybe the implementations. I think it's important for people to realize, I mean, I know you talk about it, it's a 10-minute install. It's fairly straightforward, but it sounds a little bit too easy for some people probably that are listening. But what's actually involved? And do brands typically need any help or are there potentially any snags along the way as you implement Littledata?
So we tried to make the app, and we've gone through a number of iterations. We just launched a new embedded app following Shopify's latest design criteria, and to make it as easy as self-serve as possible. So you definitely do not need a developer to install Littledata. You don't need to make any code changes to your theme. The install consists of two parts, really. We asked you just to add an app embed, which is standard kind of code snippet that you opt into in your theme. And the second thing we ask you to do is to add what Shopify calls a kind of customer event or a web pixel to your checkout so that we can track that. And everything else is just automatic. And then, when you want to add an ad channel or a data destination, you just go in, you authorize that channel. So let's say you log in with your Google Ads account, you pick which Google Ads, what you want to connect, and then we just do the rest. So it is absolutely plug and play. The cool thing is there's then loads of, if you want to drill deeper or you have some custom needs, let's say you want to exclude recurring orders or you want to add a particular metafield, then you can then just drill into that in the settings. So we try and make it both super easy to use for the first time user, but also powerful to customize and adapt if you're a power user. It's a 30-day free trial for all customers. So generally people are seeing pretty big uplift within a couple of weeks, but we like people to have a month so they can be absolutely certain this is an improvement in data quality, because these things are a little bit subtle. It is frankly not obvious, for example, at first glance that you are missing data in any of these channels.
Right. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And to that extent, we also proud of offering excellent technical support to brands so that we can answer the question. We have a great help center, but also willing to dig into their data and figure out if it is. But yeah, to your question of are there any common snags? Not really. I mean, the brilliant thing about specializing Shopify stores is that, any of the sort of edge cases we've seen a few dozen times and have already got workarounds for support guides.
I know I've spoken to a lot of agency partners out there that actually service brands and stuff like that. And I know that you actually sell your product to agencies. And so is there anything that changes on that? Like, how does it affect maybe, because there are a lot of agency partners that are listening right now, how does it affect their workflow of how they serve their customers?
Yeah, so I think we partner with sort of three different types of agencies. I think for the design and build agencies, it's really, we're a painkiller. The data integrations or the alternative to using the data is typically setting up a sort of server-side Google Tag Manager instance, and it's all quite painful. It breaks. Client comes back to you and moans that the data's not right, and
Yeah.
you don't have
Or
anyone.
double firing.
Yeah, all of this stuff. I mean, hey, I know because I used to run one of these agencies. Before I started Littledata, we were basically a sort of Google Tag Manager maintenance business, and so it's painful. We got out of that business. The second type of agency that we were with are sort of performance marketing agencies, and I think for them, we're really enabling them to do more with their clients. The basic fix, I said, in terms of improving attribution of the ads, which obviously makes you look better for your clients, turn ad spend, but also enabling other tactics, some more sophisticated audience building, maybe, as I said, being able to target specifically new first-time subscribers or first customers, new customers versus returning customers, these sort of tactics that enable you to go more, do more for your clients. And then for the email SMS agencies, the retention marketing agencies, it's just really a simple uplift of whatever else you're doing. Obviously, the client still needs you guys to actually implement all of the right copy and tactics and brand imagery and stuff. But you can just add a little data on top of all that and get this nice uplift on the abandonment flows.
That's amazing. I know I was also kind of this morning, I peeked into the littledata.io website, and there's quite a few case studies on here of successful campaigns and ongoing clients and stuff like that. I don't know if you can kind of publicly declare a couple or mention one that you think is notable that you'd like to share today and saying, hey, here's what their life was like without Littledata, and now look at them by implementing it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think maybe since we were talking about working with agencies, I mean, let's talk about a brand called SkinFix, which is obviously a beauty brand and agency Verbal and Visual we work with. And you see, that was a really great example of a dual win because, they needed Verbal and Visual to actually do all of this setup of the flows and actually advise them strategically on how they were going to get good marketing automation set up. But by implementing the data on top of that, they could get a really amazing beast, 150% more revenue for the checkout abandonment flows, and nearly 400% more revenue for the browser abandonment flows. And so better data plus intelligent implementation is got the result there.
I think they're probably a subscription-based business too, so they would be something like Ordered Groove or something, I guess, connected.
Yeah, I think in that case you recharge, but yeah, it works.
Or recharge,
yeah.
yeah.
No, you're right, Order Groove, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Sorry. You read the case study.
I did. I do a little bit of research before recording, right?
Well done.
That's good. Okay, so that's excellent. So, and then there's lots on here. I'll make sure in the show notes that I put them in there so people can see that. And I know this is kind of more of a side topic, and it's not maybe necessarily in your forte, but it seems like a lot of people are talking about AI right now, and I don't really see you mentioning anything about AI and Littledata, and kind of, it's not really part of your core story, but what's your mindset and where do you believe things are headed as it relates to AI and data and the data layer and just our current future?
I've no doubt that AI is transforming online marketing for sure. And I think some of the big winners here are the big ad platforms that, as I said, have got the massive data sets and AI engineers internally to make use of this. So I think, both Google and Meta are moving toward a world in which, a lot more of the campaign planning, creative orchestration can be done automatically. I think that's great. But as I said, it is all underpinned by having the right feedback loop with the right data. So the way I see it is that AI running blind is, worse than a plodding PPC manager. What it needs, but it can be way better if it can have a fast feedback loop in terms of which creators and campaign are working. So by using the data versus the free connectors, you're giving the AI every chance to shine. Yeah, there's two other aspects where it impinges on our business. I mean, there is a use for AI in terms of what we might call fuzzy matching of users. Like, I think a lot of our attribution is based on deterministic matching. Like, we don't say it's the same person unless we're very sure that the email matches and the phone number matches and stuff. But there are obviously some cases where you can, I mean, again, I think it's stretching the words of AI because this fuzzy matching has been around as a concept for decades. It's just really using some machine learning techniques to sort of figure out, does this pattern fall in the same thing we've seen before? Yeah, I guess rail against competitors that claim AI is doing something clever, because I think really it's not AI in the true sense. But I think there is a third case which really is, there is a potential, and that is, we see a lot of people in the market starting to develop what I would call AI first insight tools. So rather than, you having a dashboard that you log into and a graph, I do definitely think the paradigm has changed and people want to have a chat interface that they can query. Now, I know, Shopify themselves does this well with Sidekick, but I think what the data that's missing from Shopify's own analytics tools is all of that, what I would call top of funnel data, like, what were people doing before they purchased. So if you want to ask a question about like how many orders they do last month, yeah, Sidekick's absolutely fine. But if you want to ask a question like, what was the incremental benefit of meta ads to me? No, not a chance it can answer that. There's no concepts. I think, rather than betting on building our own tool out there, there are players like Triple Whale and Polar Analytics that are doing that well in the market. I'm betting on Google and Meta themselves. So having that tool and us powering it. So Google, if we take, for example, have finally rolled out their own chat interface for Google Analytics. It is still in early stages. I think it took them a lot longer than expected to iron out some of the challenges there, because it is actually quite thorny beneath the scenes. But honestly, I'm quite excited now that I think the big barrier to people using Google Analytics more has always been the user interface. Like, it's a really hard learning curve to figure out how to build each report. I think if you can have a chat interface where all the accurate data is in there via Littledata and just be able to ask questions, I think a lot more people will be comfortable with that and getting value from it.
Yeah, I think I noticed too, and it's more of a side note, at the whole Shopify and ChatGPT kind of connection. It's interesting. I know that's probably not a data layer that you're involved with, because it's more Shopify's existing data, like orders and products and customers and things, and that kind of transfers over to ChatGPT and can reveal and allow checkout in ChatGPT.
Well, I think it's going to become an important order channel for a lot of brands. I believe that if I understand the partnership, that people will be able to check out in ChatGPT itself, and it'll appear in your Shopify store a bit like you get orders from, if you connect to Amazon or some other channel. In fact, it's quite similar to Amazon in quite a lot of ways. So you won't know much about the user journey before that's the problem. You'll know that they ordered through ChatGPT. You just won't know what is the prompts. And that, there are other tools that might help you figure out what they were searching for. But I believe, getting back to the point I was making about feeding all of your revenue into the ad channels, like, again, that ChatGPT sale may well have been driven by Facebook ads. So feeding that back into Facebook ads and telling them that the sale happened is still super important. I think there's another channel which is actually much more important right now that people aren't talking about enough, which is the Shop app. Shopify's pay network now, which has, hundreds of millions of users, and is starting to become an order channel in its own right. And again, one of the things we can support is tracking orders that come through there, because I think that's obviously where Shopify is going, is to more of a, with their universal catalog, they're getting towards a more sort of Amazon type experience, right?
Super app for sure, just like China, 100%.
So I think being able to, again, understand as much as is possible to understand the customer journey that's led people to purchase via the Shop app.
So what do you think our next steps are? Because there's a lot of different people that are listening. I know that Littledata is a very easy kind of a self-serve kind of opportunity. And I think from there, it's like having that 30-day free trials is fantastic, because it really gives people the opportunity to kick the few tires. Is there anything else you can think about from the mid-market to enterprise people? Like, what do you believe some of their next steps might be?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things on the roadmap currently that's going to be of great relevance to some of those particularly larger brands listening. So one of them is Shopify Markets. So a lot of people are moving from a kind of multi-source setup to Shopify Markets to make it much easier to manage inventory, currencies, etc. But one of the major limitations of Shopify Markets is that then when you use one of those like basic integrations for, let's say, Facebook ads, all of that global data is going to come merged into one ad account. So what you need to be able to do is, both from an analytics point of view, but also from a ad management point of view, split it out by country, by market, specifically into different destinations. And so that's exactly what Littledata will allow you to do from this month, is to configure each market completely separately, completely different pipeline rules, different filtering, different ad accounts if you want them, but also just tagging, whether it's in Klaviyo or Google Analytics, be able to build a segment that says, hey, I just want to look at the people who are in my, Canadian market, or maybe people who are in my B2B Canadian market, because that's also a thing, is markets aren't just geographic. They might be about different storefront experiences. So yes, full support for Shopify Markets. That's critical. We're just rolling out an integration for Microsoft ads. Again, like Bing ads, as it was, has been around for quite a while, but it's got a bit of a resurgence through the OpenAI partnership, and We see an increased number of brands wanting to get accurate data there. And and more to the point, the Shopify Microsoft Ads integration out of the box is even ropier. It really just doesn't exist. So that will be something we're supporting for next month. And then the final thing that we is longer term the horizon is what we're calling the event customizers. So this is going to allow brands to basically configure their own events. So let's say, going back to the Klaviyo opportunity, maybe I want to trigger a flow for people who only purchased one time this particular product category and then came back and viewed this other product category. You'll be able to do all sorts of funky configurations, a lot beyond the event building capacity within Klaviyo itself. And that will also be true for all of the other ad channels as well. So you'll be at whatever destination, whatever marketing channel you're using, you'll be able to have a lot more fine-grained control of which events you send where.
That's amazing. Well, Ed, thanks so much for jumping on the show today. I think the 30-day free trial is very easy. Just go to littledata.io, and there's a link in the corner there.
Install the Shopify app, start the trial, reach out to us. We have a great support team if you have any questions. But I think you'll find it's a very seamless experience, and I very much hope we can help you get a more efficient ad spend and faster growth to your brand.
I know. I learn something new every time we talk. I love it. So I know you're going to help a lot of people that are listening right now. Number one, just to get their numbers straight. I think that's the first starting point. And now with this data layer and the ad platforms, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing today.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Have yourself a great afternoon.
Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.